In a time long past, when the earth was cloaked in forests deep and castles stood like stone sentinels upon the hills, there lived folk of every kind: farmers, merchants, nobles, monks, and villagers, each with their own way of breaking bread and taking sustenance. The days moved slowly in those times, and the seasons were the rhythm by which all lives were measured. The eating habits of these folk, shaped by the land and the toil of their hands, were humble and thoughtful, not hurried or wasteful as might be seen in later centuries. Food was not only nourishment, but a reflection of one's station, the climate, and the customs that bound people together in quiet routine. Let us now drift into the stillness of that age, wandering gently through the meadows and manor kitchens, abbeys and alehouses, learning how these people of old did eat, and how their meals echoed the steady heartbeat of a slower, sleepier world. Part 2: Morning Meals in Villages and Fields. The morning light crept gently over the thatched roofs of villages and farms. Roosters gave their low, croaking call, and the chill of night still lingered upon the grass. In the homes of peasants, those who worked the soil with their bare hands, the first meal of the day was modest. This meal was called breakfast, though it was unlike what we know by that name. It might be taken early by laborers before heading to the fields, or later, once the chores were begun. Often it was no more than a crust of dark rye bread, chewed slowly with a bite of cheese or a smear of lard. Some drank warm ale or a thin pottage of oats, salted and stirred over the hearth fire. There was no rush in these mornings. The day was long, and food was fuel. Yet even the simplest of meals was shared in the company of family, beside the crackling embers, with prayers murmured under breath and thoughts of the labor ahead. Part 3: The Midday Meal, a noble's table and a peasant's bowl. Come the rising sun and the tolling of the church bell for terce, mid-morning prayers, the day's true meal approached. Among the peasants, this meal was often the main repast, taken when the sun was high. It was called dinner, and it brought respite from toil. A pot of pottage, that ever-present stew of grains, beans, roots, and herbs, bubbled gently in every cottage. Into the pot went what was available: onions, cabbage, turnips, and now and then a bit of salted pork or a wild mushroom found in the woods. In the manners of the nobility, meanwhile, the meal was a display of both nourishment and rank. Long wooden tables were covered with linen cloth, and trenchers, thick slabs of stale bread, served as plates. The food was richer here: roasted fowl, boiled meats, pastries filled with fruits or meats, and pies seasoned with pepper and cloves. Yet even among the wealthy, there was little waste. Leftovers were shared with servants or given to the poor. Wine might be served to the lord and lady, but ale was drunk by nearly all, as the water was seldom safe. And always, whether in cottage or castle, there was bread, the staff of life, dark and coarse for the poor, fine and wheaten for the rich. Part 4: Food and the Faithful, Monastic Diets and Fasting Days. In the cloisters and quiet gardens of the monasteries, meals were taken with reverence and silence. The monks, devoted to their prayers and the work of their hands, followed strict rules regarding food. Most monastic communities ate only 2 meals a day. Flesh was often forbidden, save for the sick, and so their diet centered around fish, vegetables, eggs, cheese, and bread. Meals were plain, and the monks sat on long benches in the refectory, listening to the reading of sacred texts while they ate. Fasting was common, on Wednesdays, Fridays, and during Lent. On these days, no meat was consumed, and meals were simple to the point of austerity. Yet even this simplicity was part of a peaceful rhythm, a calm procession of days and nights marked by prayer, labor, and rest. Part 5. The evening meal, supper and stillness. As the sun fell behind the trees and the sky turned dusky blue, supper was taken in homes across the land. It was lighter than dinner and taken before night fully descended. For the peasant family, it might be the same pottage once again, perhaps with a bit of new bread, baked fresh from the communal oven. Children nodded off beside the hearth, their bellies warm and full. In castles, the evening meal was quieter than the midday feast. Candles flickered, and servants brought simple dishes, cold meats, spiced wine, and perhaps a baked apple or a bit of honeyed bread. The mood was reflective, preparing for sleep. Folk believed that one should not go to bed on an empty stomach, nor on an overly full one. Moderation was advised, not only for the soul, but for the sake of restful slumber. Part 6. The Seasons on the Plate. As we drift through the months of a medieval year, the diet shifted with the seasons. Spring brought fresh greens, nettles, wild garlic, young leeks. Summer gave beans, berries, and eggs in plenty. Autumn yielded apples, nuts, and grains. The harvest gathered, with both joy and weariness. Winter meals were heartier, with salted meats, dried peas, and root vegetables drawn from cold cellars. Nothing was wasted. Food was preserved by salting, drying, pickling. Smokehouses and earthen pits stored what would last. In lean years, folk turned to acorns, bark, or broth made from bones. Yet even then, they gave thanks for what they had. Part 7. A gentle journey through ingredients. Let us now wander through the ingredients of their daily fare. Wheat and barley, ground at the mill, became bread and porridge. Honey sweetened cakes and mead. Milk from goats and cows was churned into butter and cheese. Herbs from kitchen gardens, sage, parsley, dill, flavored the pots. Chickens gave eggs, and bees gave wax for candles and combs for honey. Apples, pears, and plums grew in the orchards, and nuts were gathered from the woods. Everything was grown, raised, or foraged. There were no distant spices save for the noble's spice box, and even those, pepper, cinnamon, saffron, were rare and precious. Part 8. Customs and Curiosities. Among the many customs of medieval eating were strange and thoughtful habits. Before and after meals, hands were washed with scented water poured from jugs. Meat was carved at the table by skilled servers. Food was shared, sometimes with fingers, and trenchers were given to beggars or dogs. Salt was a symbol of wealth, and where one sat in relation to the salt cellar told one's rank. The lord sat above the salt, while lesser folk sat below. Hospitality was sacred. A traveler at a manor or monastery was fed without question. The sharing of food bound people together in trust and peace. Part 9. The quiet alehouses and market stalls. In the towns, markets bustled in daylight and fell quiet at dusk. There, bread, fish, fruits, and hot pies could be bought. Street vendors called their wares, and the scent of roasting chestnuts and meat pies mingled in the air. Alehouses offered drink and companionship, a bowl of stew, a mug of ale, a warm corner by the fire. These places were modest, but they fed the bellies and spirits of many. Part 10. Sleep and the Stomach. Rest after the meal. And now, as the night deepens, we return to the hush of the medieval night. Meals have been taken, dishes are washed, fires are banked low, and families gather in their beds, beneath woolen blankets and straw mattresses. A full stomach, but not too full, brings dreams. A loaf, saved for the morrow, rests on the shelf. A pot of pottage cools beside the hearth. The day is done. Sleep comes to the village and the castle, to the monk in his cell and the shepherd on the hill. Dreams of harvest and feasts, of warm bread and meadows. And so ends this gentle journey through the quiet feasts of the Middle Ages. The food was simple, the days were slow, and every bite was part of life's gentle rhythm. Let your own eyes close now and dream of bread ovens and berry fields, of distant bells and warm, flickering fires.